Hello and welcome to the Wise Why. This morning I am joined by Andy Lambert, who I got the pleasure of seeing speak. And as a coach who helps people speak with confidence, I got to see his presentation where it went, there's no text. And the way Andy handled it blew my mind because it was just professional. It didn't throw him. And for that reason, I reached out and had to say, well done. And since then, we've built this friendship through LinkedIn. And I am honored to say that I've been able to look at the Adobe Express before it went live. So enough about me, because the show is not about me. It's over to Andy. Andy, please introduce yourself.
Oh, well, thank you very much for a lovely intro, Kirsty. Lovely to be here. And yes, well, inside, whilst I was trying to give that presentation and nothing appeared on the screen, one speaks to having a bit of time to prep beforehand, and knowing your stuff does help. And also inside, I was panicking like mad, but just managed to not portray it. But anyway, thank you again for the invite. I'm Andy, and currently work in product for Adobe, working on a product called Adobe Express. But possibly more interestingly, 8 years ago, was part of a founding team of a company called ContenCal, which became one of the UK's, I think, biggest ever acquisitions. So we built the business over 8 years and got acquired by Adobe at the end of December 21. And yeah, it still feels like a fairy tale, to be honest, because yeah, that was what we set out to do, to build a venture scale business with the idea to be acquired at some point. And that dream came true. So yeah, feeling still very grateful 2 years down the line, but yeah, still working for Adobe, which is quite an incredible place to be as well. So yeah, enjoying what I describe as the pathless path right now. Not too sure what happens next, but kind of interested to figure out where it goes.
I love a pathless path. I do it all the time. If I hadn't sat on the pathless path, I wouldn't actually be doing what I'm doing now. And I sat on it for about 3 years, not knowing which road to take. So enjoy the process of the pathless path. Try and say that in the morning. Wow, that's a good one. Can you explain a bit more about what ContentCal is? Because I know, but a lot of people don't.
Yeah, so as the name might suggest, very innovatively named, like because we built a content calendar, so we called it ContentCal. The vast majority of people try and plan content in a spreadsheet by trying to have some consistency and some structure to a content plan. Most people structure that in usually like a spreadsheet or Google Sheet or maybe Trello or something like that. And people try their best to maintain some like consistent structure and consistency behind content publishing. Obviously, you know this through your work, and people set out with great intentions. Like, yeah, I want to build a brand. I want to build my personal brand, build my reputation, be known for something. And they try and build a strategy and think, right, well, how am I going to have a posting frequency? So I maybe need to map it out in a spreadsheet and build a content plan with pillars and themes and all that kind of stuff. We can talk about content strategy later on. And content strategy and business growth, the intersection of that has fascinated me forever, right? The intersection between like how we build our own personal brands and how we build a business at the same time. That area fascinates me. So we built a product to address that by creating a platform that allowed people to build their content strategies, to visualize it in front of them, to organize it around like themes and topics, so there's a good balanced mix across the kind of things that you want to create, and then have that automatically published to all of the social channels, whichever ones you want to build a brand on. And then of course bring back all of the analytics, best times to post, the insights, the things that performed well, that kind of thing, so that you can understand how your content strategy is performing, make tweaks and optimization, and ultimately have some consistency and rigor behind it, rather than it being like, hey, I'm really going to get into it, go hell for leather and trying to do it for a month and then stopping. Consistency is everything on social, as in like just showing up regularly and being consistent with the type of things that you're trying to achieve and the audience that you're trying to appeal to. All this stuff you well know, Kirsty. So yeah, we built a product to systemize that, and yeah, became the fastest growing social media technology there was at the time. So naturally we captured quite a lot of market interest, got used in about 110 countries, and then got bought.
It's phenomenal. And I think what you just said there was really important, because there's a couple of things I've seen from you posting on socials, that there is a difference between personal branding posts or your personal page posts and a business post. A couple of things here. And business posting is really, really different and can be quite challenging. But I really like the fact that you talked about consistency there, because everyone seems to think or get caught up on this thing about consistency being about the time you post. But it's not just that, is it?
No, it's definitely not. And it's, I would rather people post once a week and just do that over a longer period of time than try and do one a day, burn out, and it just being super painful and just becoming such a burden. And it is like, you know, like you, I've been content creating for many, many years, right? And it is difficult to always find the momentum and the motivation. It's about trying to find a balance that feels right for you. I can post every day, and I try to for many times, and it's just like it becomes a burden and I don't enjoy it anymore, and I just end up stopping because I need a break. That's not what we want to do when we're trying to build our personal brands or build a business, right? We're not looking to go viral tomorrow. You know, it might feel like that's the goal, but it never is. It's about consistent growth. So that might well be like, you know, publishing 3 times a week or once a week, but that's only one element of consistency. The more important element of consistency is consistency of message, right? What you stand for, your personal brand, all of that is the actual important consistency bit, right? Not, oh, I publish every day at 8 a.m. or whatever. That's a component of it. And that's your cadence. But really what you're looking for is like, here is what I want to be known for. Here are my goals, and here's who I want to appeal to. Now, there's a Venn diagram, and an overlap that sits right in the middle of that as like what I'm good at, what my audience want to hear and want to learn. And that is the middle of the bullseye that you want to go for. And that's what you need to be absolutely resolutely consistent towards.
And you, I love, and something I've got to say to you, I love your videos where you do your social media rundown are my go-to every week. You know, I get really busy, and yes, I get all of the news coming into my inbox, but very rarely, particularly recently, have I had a chance to actually follow it. But your little snippets, 30 seconds, a minute of that update of what's going on is absolutely, it's one of my weekly things. So can I just, from a personal point of view, when I'm busy juggling things, I can click it on, I can be multitasking over here, but I know what's going on because I know that Andy's going to deliver it. So thank you for that bit of consistency. It's really key.
It's good. It's nice to point out that like that is, I've been doing that every single week for 8 years. Haven't missed a single week in 8 years. And it makes a difference. And people are like, oh, how did you do this? And I had 50 people in a room last Wednesday to do a social media meetup. And everyone's like, oh, I know you from the videos. And, you know, people are like, oh, how did you do this? It's just like, just do it. Like, it was awful the first time I did it. And now, you know, I can do it very quickly now because you're just in a rhythm. So it's like anything, like social media, content creation, personal brand building is just habit. It's just habit. So they're very hard to form, easy to break. So I just have a non-moving calendar invite that recurs every Tuesday, like record and post your roundup. Like you have to do it, and I will feel like a failure if I don't. It's written on my weekly goals list behind it. It has been for the last 8 years. That is exactly what consistency means. Yeah, you just show up again and again when you know that it's the right kind of thing. And it's the right kind of thing because it works. It works, and it targets the audience that I want to appeal to, which is people like you, Kirsty, to be honest.
But the thing is, it's not, and I really want to touch on this before I ask you some other questions, but I want to touch on the fact that it helps. So it helps and it serves. So it shows exactly what you do. It educates. And I think that's really key, because everyone goes out there shouting about, oh, social media needs to be entertaining. Well, yeah, great. Off you go to TikTok. But actually on somewhere like LinkedIn, I want education. I don't actually want to be entertained watching a dog flying, catching a frisbee. And that doesn't mean I don't like those videos. I do. I really do. But it doesn't mean that I've got time when I'm trying to structure my day's work. I want educational content. And that's where you absolutely, I'm going to say it because I can't help it, but that's where you rock your online presence. Sorry, I couldn't resist that one.
Well, I'll appreciate it as a former professional musician and wannabe rock star. I'll take it. I'll take it.
So that's what I want to touch on is your journey before ContentCal. So let's explore that. Let's hear about this musician.
So I found music. So I'll try and keep this as short as possible. Found music at about 13 years of age, and I was desperate to be in a band purely because the people that were in bands got all the girls. And I was like, I don't have a girlfriend. I really want one. So I'm going to learn how to play music. So take from that what you will. But yeah, I'm not sure I've ever expressed that on camera before, but never mind. There you go. It's a new thing. So I was like, okay, well, that seems like a great motivation to learn music. So I thought the drummers were always the coolest ones in the band. Every Friday I would go to the local kind of youth club and watch the music, and I was always into like rock music. So I was like, I want to be a drummer. So I worked for my dad painting things for the next 8 weeks until I'd earned enough pocket money to get myself a drum kit, much to my parents' disdain. They're like, oh, it would just be a a little phase. He'll sell it in a couple of weeks. 22 years later, I am still playing every single day. But so then I was lucky enough to find the thing that, like, even talking about music makes my hair stand on end, because when you're lucky enough to find the thing that like gives you unlimited energy, I could do it forever. And I was so into it, it just overwhelmed my life. Everything, nothing would compare to playing and writing music. And then I joined a band which ended up going quite well. We got signed, got a record deal. Our albums in shops, got number 24 on the UK rock charts. I was on TV, and I was like, this is mad. Like 18, 19 years old, went into HMV when you used to buy CDs. The band was called Pitch Blend, looking through like Pink Floyd, and then Pitch Blend next to it in the rack. I was like, I'm next to Pink Floyd. Like the best day of my life, and obviously bought the only copy of our record that was in HMV. Still got that somewhere in my drawer here. But anyway, amazing. But the thing that we learned, this is where it connects the story, is that we got very arrogant about our musical ability. We would do no marketing at all. We'd trust our label to look after it. All about the music. We don't need to market it because we are so into what we did. And we're all about our product and not about our market. And we were wondering, as we're going through this kind of 5-year journey, we're wondering why there's fewer and fewer people turning up to our gigs. And even though we're like the headline act, the bands that were supporting us like had reams of crowds. They had like buses full of crowds coming to these shows, and they would all depart when they left and like, oh, there's less people watching us now. So over time, then it all fizzled out, which is a massive shame. But you don't get paid very much at all, even when you like think that looks on the outside like it's going quite well. You run out of time because you really need to get paid to get a decent salary as a musician. Super, super hard. So we didn't really cross that chasm to make it sustainable as a lifestyle. There's only so much debt you can tolerate as a 20-year-old. So I think so at that point I was like, it just dawned on me that we really didn't understand marketing at all. And at that point I was like, well, I'm going to need to actually do something proper to earn some money. But I have no skills other than the fact that I'm quite good at playing drums. So what do? I was also quite into cars at that point. So I started buying and selling cars and made a little car business, and got a lot better at marketing and being able to position and write the copy about the cars I had for sale, which is, all sounds a little bit rough and ready, but there you go. And I started to really appreciate the value of like what good marketing looks like, because I'd look at all these car sales ads and they were terribly written, poor pictures, and I was like, it's just easier. Like you start to realize that it's not about the product. The marketing is the thing that really attracts people. The same with like the music, right? We might have had the best product, but we didn't engage an audience in the way that we should have done. So all of that just became interesting learning. And then as I started to mature and then, finally got the girlfriend of my dreams that became my wife, etc. And I have to grow up and, and do all that kind of stuff. So then I started thinking, right, well, I need to understand a little bit more around business, because my car sales business, kind of plateaued really. It was a good experience, but I was like, I'm going to need to, and like how my mum would describe, get a proper job. So yeah, I then worked in, fortunately, my first proper job was in a software business. And from that moment, I was hooked. So that taught me a lot of the kind of fundamentals. I was in sales, taught me the fundamentals of good business, etc. And then after 7 years of doing that quite well, I was like, I think I'm ready to do this for myself. But I had a very young child at the time. I wasn't ready to take the leap into just saying, right, I'm going to found my own business. So I was lucky enough to be introduced in like a Dragon's Den type of scenario to someone that was doing like a pitch day that was looking to raise money. It was the guy who came up with the idea for ContenCal. I approached him after he did his pitch. And I was like, I don't have any money to invest, but I would love to join you in the journey because the idea, I get it, because it's the perfect intersection. It's software and it's all about marketing. And I think I get this marketing thing. So joined him in 2016, and yeah, you know the story from that moment forth. There you go. Sorry, very long story. Apologies.
Not at all. I love it because, and the reason I love it is there's some symbiosis between you and me. So I wasn't. Yes, I can play an instrument. Well, I'm very rusty now, but I was a performer. You know, I was an actor, a singer, and dancer. Not great
Amazing.
dancer, but a good enough that I could get into 42nd Street. So good enough.
So,
Yeah, so I have hoofed on in around the world. Yeah, well, around the UK. So it's interesting because as an actor, you have to market yourself, and then I grew up because, like you have to be working all the time to make money from being an actor. You don't make any money when you're not working, and what you do is you take on fill-in jobs, and the fill-in jobs were all marketing based. In the end, they were either selling makeup in Harrods, Selfridges, and the top West End stores, or they were running events for people like, I'm going to name drop here, Nintendo, and I was an event manager, or I was working for Intel and I was talking about sales training. And so along the way, suddenly, when I met my beautiful, wonderful Dennis, beautiful husband, I wanted to buy a house with him. And it was like, well, I need to grow up now. And I ended up, funnily enough, in sales and marketing roles. Not surprising because that's symbiosis, but it's that earlier failing of, and it's not a failing, it's a magical mistake, a magical learning that, as an actor, you really have to market yourself. And I was always too loud.
no.
and too unapologetic. I mean, 30 years ago when I was in my 20s, it was a very different industry to where we are now. And your role as a woman in the business, I was pretty, but I wouldn't keep my mouth shut. Bit too opinionated. As a 50-year-old woman, I can get away with being an opinionated old bag, but in your 20s you can't, or you couldn't then. You could now, but you couldn't then. It's a different world. But it's just interesting, that journey, and how we've learned from that. So you're in a band, you've learned the drums, which is incredible. You're still playing today. Who's inspired you?
This will sound incredibly cheesy. There's really three people. So obviously, one, like, everything I do is for the love of my life. Has been my wife for many years now. So all of my life choices are based around like doing the best thing I can for my family. Sounds incredibly like trite, but it really is. And then I was fortunate, and this is possibly the bit where I got luckiest in my life. So I met a guy called Colin Smith, and I met him on that kind of journey that I just described just before I met Alex. Actually, he was the one that introduced me to Alex, who came up with the idea for ContentCal. And he very quickly, I was like, it sounds kind of weird, and I feel strange asking, like, I want you to be my mentor, because I met him. He was a 56-year-old guy when I met him. I'd founded a few businesses, but like, just the nicest, most genuine individual. Like, it's so easy to think that super successful people are, trying to not swear here, are not very nice people, and tend to be incredibly self-involved, selfish, and it tends to be like, I will tread on other people to get where I want to. And a lot of entrepreneurs have that mindset, and it's what's made them incredibly successful. That's the bit that's always made me feel wrong about business and entrepreneurship, like you don't have to be a horrible human being, because I've tried to pride myself on being a good person. And you know, when you feel like something just in the pit of your stomach, something doesn't feel right, you know. And I love the idea of like building venture scale businesses and doing, you know, following the journey that we've been on. But I want to do it in the right way and leave the right impact and lasting impression, as best we can. And Colin absolutely has that mindset, and he's just been like my spirit guide, for want of a better word, of like helping me be and find my potential, because I have some very limiting beliefs typically. So I've had to work with therapists to help that too, because, you know, I'm incredibly competitive and have a lot of desire. I'm very hard on myself, like most people that end up doing some cool things. Very hard on myself, never enough, you know, always striving for next one. So it's amazing when you've got someone that has a similar mindset, but it's kind of like seeing the other side of it and has the benefit of perspective, because they've got, you know, 30 years on you or whatever. And yeah, he's my work dad, and he is like the thing that has helped me through and basically made me who I am over the last 8 years or so. So finding a mentor, quite frankly, is the most important thing that's ever happened to me. And you know, whenever I think you do a lot of work in schools. I think, yeah, I do some similar stuff. But my mum always told me this, but you don't listen when you're a kid. Like, you are who you spend your time with. So choose very, very carefully. And I've been very lucky to actually start, as my career's progressed, spend time with people that have helped me like evolve to who I want to become. So yeah, finding that person in your life is a very, very blessed thing.
That's beautiful. And I totally agree with you. I have people, and I'm hard on myself. I just did Dr. Jenny Gordon, who's been on here. I don't know if you know Dr. Jenny, but she's absolutely brilliant. She's a brilliance coach. And she's just put up a new personality test. And I did it last week. So it's your animal spirit, you know, who you are. And I was really shocked by my results. I expected there to be an ant, you know, creativity. But I got a lion, not surprisingly. Anyone who knows me will go, yeah, that's right. Then I got the cat, which I thought was interesting, because it means that, and I am cynical. I will be, I do question everything, which is, I hadn't realized just how much I am actually quite cynical. And then I'm the cheater, and I do exhaust everybody. So I totally get that. But there were some things in that made me uncomfortable, because it was like, oh, am I really like that? I know I can be a little bit imposing and I can scare people, but it was a really interesting test. And I'll drop this into the comments, because it's definitely worthwhile doing it, because as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, I recognize that. But also the entrepreneur spirit means that you have to have some of these elements. It does, however, mean that you can be really tough on yourself, because you're constantly driving. And me with the cheater, and I'm always looking for the next best thing, right?
Yeah, I can identify, definitely.
So I think it's important. I love the fact that you do everything for your family. That is, I mean, that's the whole reason I set up the business, was so I could be at my daughter's school to collect. You know, I wanted to be there for her. I wanted to be consistent. And ultimately, I want to leave her something that she can take over if she wants to. If she doesn't want to, she can like sell it and I'll be dead, so it won't matter, right?
What a lovely sentiment for a Friday morning.
I know. I love that. So, along the way, you've had lots of pivots. You have pivoted and pivoted. I'm just wondering how many times you may have just gone and had one of those aha moments. You've obviously had it with your mentor, but other ones along the way where you went, aha. And for me, they tend to be about a year later where I go, oh. So I'm just wondering if you've had any oh or aha moments.
I think, yeah, let me think about this. But one thing that's helped me in everything makes sense in hindsight. You can easily tell. I can tell a really good story about my past, because it all makes sense in the same way it like makes sense from your acting career and how you've evolved to where you're at now. And there's a really good book on this, which is called like The Squiggly Career. And the fact is, like, it just doesn't go like we all think it's a linear path, continual progression. just doesn't happen. And the way, even now when I kind of tell the story like I have, in hindsight, it makes it seem like, oh, that's just a logical journey. Like it's not really, because, you know, after succeeding in sales, you could just stay on that path. And to be honest, my wife would have preferred that I had, to be honest, because, you know, you can earn really good money and everything's going well and everything's wonderful. And because I'm an idiot, I'm like, I think I can do this myself. So, but I guess like I wasn't completely open to doing huge amounts of risk. That's why I wanted to join someone in doing it. But you take a huge drop in salary, and that is that moment where, you know, leap into the unknown, where I've always been quite okay with doing things that I just don't know how to do. You know, you just like a very much screw it, let's do it type of attitude, which does get me into hot water sometimes, if I'm honest, because I have an action bias, or bias towards action. I'm just like, that's on it. We'll make it up. We'll figure it out. And just, you know, I just feel like when you're thrown into the unknown, you just get those, there's like another gear that you trigger that you just can't engage. Or for me personally, I can't engage that second gear when I'm cognitively thinking about it. It's like going back to the first story of like thrown in the, when a presentation dies as you're giving a talk, you're just like, you don't prepare for that stuff. It's just like, you know, it's fight or flight. Your inner instincts just take over. And I think probably the only aha moment I had was like just how comfortable I was in just ambiguity. You just go, oh, well, I'm in something. I don't really know how to build a business from scratch, but let's just figure it out. And for some reason, it never felt scary. It was just like, well, I'm only doing this because I think I can. And it wasn't in my mind that this would be like failure. I wouldn't see it as a failure because I'm just exploring. You know, this is a way of personal development, because that's the thing that's really driven me, is like, how can I be the best version of myself? And I was never that way at school, to be honest, because I was very middling, not really that interested in doing anything particularly remarkable. It's just over time I just got really interested in, you know, like my own capacity to do new things. And when you're kind of thinking about it from that perspective, rather than like, oh, how am I going to be perceived in my career, or am I going to earn more money or whatever, when you're just thinking, well, this is just about a personal journey that I'm on, of trying to explore new limits of what I'm good at, what I'm not so good at. I think that's probably the best way I can contextualize it. No aha moment, just over time, just constant attempt to evolve my capabilities. So
I think it's brilliant, because I think there's a lot of people that relate to that. I know I do. So we've had some lovely comments, because I always go to the comments at some point. So Joanne Baker from Emerald Training has joined us. She says, I'm so looking forward to this. She really was. She's celebrating her first year in business, which is really
amazing.
cool. So congratulations. Jill Gake, who I was sitting next to actually when you did your presentations, joined us. So true that randomness of our life journeys provides qualifications through experience. And Mark Adams has totally agreed. And then Padma Knowles has joined and said, amazing book. Here's to supporting squiggly careers. So you've touched some people this morning. This is where the tables turn. And this is why I'm moving in my chair, because I always get slightly uncomfortable at this point. And you get to throw a question at me.
So I'm going to pick on something that we were talking about just before we went on camera. So you're doing a lot of, well, laying the foundations for your kind of next stage of what you're doing and scaling your business, etc. But where's the motivation come from for that? What does the future look like? What does the end state look like?
So I've got a real big plan of launching a social enterprise, and I've talked about it before, and it's because I have been homeless. I spent nearly a year living in a tent. When I realized I needed to get a job, I looked at what I could do, and I could do a kickball change and a pirouette, and I could sing a song from the West End, and I could act a bit, and I could throw lovely different accents. So I could do a Liverpool or a Glasgow, I could do American. It's great. But in real life, on a tangible level of how was I employable, it wasn't necessarily great. And I was very lucky that from being homeless, I eventually made a life-changing decision. And that life-changing decision eventually took me back to my parents. And I was lucky. I was really lucky that my parents were there, and they took me back in my mid-30s, and I put myself through university. And it was really challenging because I'd absolutely broken at this point, and I wasn't the person I am today. It was a huge life-changing decision. Because you don't suddenly find yourself homeless. It's a couple of steps. You do, but it's 3 or 4 steps, and then you're homeless. And there's a point. You've got to find your way out. And I would like to be able to help people by setting up some kind of social enterprise for the people who don't have parents, who can't go back home, who can't necessarily eat the frog, which is what I genuinely had to do because I'd forgotten how to be a daughter. And my parents could easily have said no because I'd been that vile. So I'd like to set up a social enterprise which will help people who don't have the fallback to get back on their feet. And so I've got to scale KVDB so that I've got a working business, so that when I go for funding for the social enterprise, people will see me as viable. So that's why I'm scaling. That's why I'm launching the 3 mini courses, and why I do everything I do, because I want my daughter to be really, really proud. Because when I tell her the story of how I found myself living 6 months in a tent and then moving into it, I got a home. A friend took us in, Helen, and then we converted a VW transporter van, and I'd lived in that for another 6 months. I can see your face here. You're like, really? All of this happened? So yeah, I'd like to be able to, my daughter to be able to look back, and when she's really facing really tough times, because she's got some coming, I want her to know that mummy did it. And mummy can tell, I'm getting quite emotional here. Mummy did it, and mummy's helping other people to get out of this hole, because it's really black and it's really horrible. So my driving force is to get KVDB to where it is, and then I will go and get this social enterprise and help other people to turn their lives around, because it ain't easy.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't expect an answer quite like that, Kirsty. So
No.
yeah, my hair's standing on end for that.
Sorry. Yes.
That's quite something. That is quite something.
It was. I'm not gonna hide it. So from 2000 through to 2004, 2005, my life was not the life I have now. I pinch myself every single day. I have a beautiful husband, an amazing daughter, and I live in a massive, I mean, it's not massive, but it's massive to me, because, I was in a tent. I mean, there was snow on the ground, and Helen Gosling came and bought me tea and went, enough, you're coming to live in our spare room. Yeah, it wasn't good, and it wasn't easy. And pride put me there, ultimately, pride and not being able to ask for help. So I'd like to be able to help people ask for help. So yeah, there you go.
Wow, good on you. Well, yeah, you certainly have a few supporters on this call, and certainly you can count them as a supporter of me. That is for sure.
Thank you. I would just love to be able to empower other people to get that helping hand, because it's really lonely. So let's talk about something really nice before we finish off, even though it means we're going to overrun. You mentioned you've got a daughter. You've got children?
2 sons. Yeah.
2 sons. Wow. How old are they?
9 and 5.
Oh, wow. Very close to the age of mine. So I'm going to now thank you. I just did not want to leave it on that. Whoo. No.
No, yeah. I mean, it's quite a story, but like ultimately, that's a proper purpose, though. And yeah, I have huge admiration for you, and I think it's an important and powerful thing, because that really is. I mean, it sums what you're all about up perfectly, and that goes nicely full circle to personal branding. It's like the only way you can do this is by having a super clear why, because the journey will look like that. The journey will suck sometimes, will have moments of elation, but that overarching purpose is the thing that becomes a fundamental drive. And yeah, and I think that's, for something like that, is super, super powerful. And like I said, like when I mentioned I was on the kind of pathless path, because I don't really know, like, I've achieved the thing that I really wanted to. So I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, well, this is fine, you know, first world problems and all. But like what is that? It's that refinding of that overarching purpose again, what we're trying to do next. So yeah, so I think there's, like, life goes like this. It goes in seasons. So sometimes it's like you've got complete clarity, and then next moment you're like, where are we going next? And I think that's okay.
Yeah, I totally agree. I can't thank you enough for, one, asking me that question, and two, for giving me your time this morning. I know we've got lots of comments, so you know how socials work. I'm not going to tell you. Go and answer them. And make sure you drop any links you want to in the comments, and people can find you, because, and we haven't touched on it, but the Adobe Express really is great. I've had some really good fun playing in there, and I'm loving testing it and enjoying working with it. So yeah, everyone, if you haven't checked it out, there was a link in my newsletter. So if you're not signed up to my newsletter, you should be, because I was pushing it in the newsletter this week.
Amazing. Yeah, that is what we're focusing on, making that the best possible product it can be for both content creation and marketing too. So and it's mostly free for everyone. So yeah, and that's the wonderful thing about working for a massive, incredible company like Adobe, is that you can make everything super accessible, which yeah, I adore.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Kirsty.